But for our next speaker on this upcoming session, first off, we have Diana Chen. Diana runs content marketing at Unstoppable Domains and hosts the Unstoppable podcast. Her mission is to onboard all 3+ billion internet users to Web3 by creating inspiring and educational content there. Inspiring and educational content on Web3, blockchain technology, DeFi, and more. She is especially passionate about finding solutions to democratize access to the web and finance for all communities. Diana started her career as an attorney and has since worked in state government, at media agencies, and as a full-time travel blogger content creator. So welcome, Diana. She's going to be joining conversation with Hassan Ali. Hassan is a software engineer for Unstoppable Domains, focusing on onboarding the world into the decentralized web and helping maintain a product that will shape the future of a free internet. Previously, Hassan was a senior software engineer at Mozilla, working on improving Firefox, a browser that aims to keep your online life protected. Outside of work, Hassan enjoys reading, traveling, staying active, and woodworking. So welcome, Hassan. They are going to be moderated by our own amazing Rosalind Gabot, who is an account executive and sales enablement lead with Power to Fly. So Roz, take it away.
Thank you so much, Meg. Hi, Diana and Hassan. I'm really excited for this chat with you all. I know you all have a brief presentation, so let's get started with that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Roz. Thank you so much, Meg, for the intro. We do have a quick slide. So Hassan is just pulling that up right now. He's going to share screen. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here. We are from Unstoppable Domains, and today we'll be talking about taking back control of your digital identity. Huge thanks to Power to Fly for inviting us to speak here and giving us this platform. We're really excited to talk about this topic that we're very passionate about, and hope that you will learn something as well. So just again, a quick intro of ourselves. I am Diana Chen. I run all things content at Unstoppable Domains. I host our podcast, which is called the Unstoppable Podcast. If you're interested in learning about crypto, blockchain, anything in that realm, definitely give the podcast a listen. And I'd love to hear your feedback on that as well. And then I'll let Hassan intro himself, and then he's going to kick us off with the presentation.
All right, can you hear me? Yeah, all good, sweet. Yeah, my name is Hassan, software engineer at Unstoppable. I joined at the end of last year in December, and I've been having a lot of fun, and I'm happy and thrilled to be here. Thank you for having me. Let's get to the presentation. So there's this new iteration of the web, commonly known as Web3, that's going to reorganize the internet and change how data is stored and accessed. It's more or less the same web, but without relying on centralized entities like the big tech firms. In order to understand this, it's worth going back in time and taking a look at the evolution of the web so we can understand why Web3 is important. It's been 32 years since the World Wide Web was invented. A lot has changed since its founding. The World Wide Web has touched the lives of billions of people around the world. And fundamentally, it changed the way we interact with others, the nature of our work, how we discover news, and how communities form and function. There are 3 known stages to the web. Most sites today operate on the first and second stage. The third stage starts now, and we're already seeing a lot of sites embrace it. The new iteration of the internet changes the data structure and gives us more control over our private data. In Web3, data isn't owned, but instead shared. So you can have different services show you different views for the same data. Tim Berners-Lee created the World Wide Web in 1989 while working at an organization called CERN based in Switzerland. Tim was working as a software engineer in a lab that had all sorts of people visiting for short duration and long durations with all sorts of computer with them. When Tim wanted to figure out how to build something, he found it really hard to get access to the information on these computers. Everything he looked at he had to connect to some new machine, had to learn how to run some new program, and sometimes he would find the data, but it would be in a format that was incompatible with his machine. Tim later got permission from his boss to work on a solution as a side project to try and solve this problem, which then led him to creating the World Wide Web. This is a screenshot of the first web page that went live in August 6, 1991, and was created by, you guessed it, Tim Berners-Lee. It ran from a computer at CERN. This is the beginning of Web 1, which refers to the first stage of the internet. In Web 1, also known as the read-only web, websites are static, where people are limited to viewing data in a passive manner. It consists of documents, of text, with links to other documents. It was the age of digitization. We took our books, research, our lives, and moved them to the web. Most people were consumers of this information. Publishers were few. A bit over a decade later, technology improved, and we slowly made our way to Web 2.0 in roughly 2003, 2004. People refer to the second stage as the read-write web, where users can not only read data from the internet, but also interact with it. Applications with a Web 2 experience have the user as a first-class object. The focus of these emerging applications is on interactions such as commenting, upvoting, pinning, tweeting, to name a few. Some of the famous sites that are known to provide a Web 2 experience are Facebook, YouTube, Pinterest, and Twitter. In these sites, users create trillions of rows of data. So now data moves bidirectionally. During the second stage of the web, for-profit companies built software and services that quickly outshine the open protocols which the initial web came with. For example, most users now use a third party like Google or Facebook to log into an application to free them from handling passwords. The good news is that billions of people get access to amazing technologies, many of which are free. But the not so good news, however, is that we have moved to an internet that's controlled by these few large for-profit companies. Let's take a deeper look at Web 2 and explore some of its problems. For-profit companies exist to make money and to effectively maximize shareholder value. This is their only reason for existence. A company will always look for ways to use its assets to generate more revenue. And if the company did not promise not to share your data, then the data is fair game. The user's privacy is not always a high priority for-profit companies. Moving on, with the web controlled by a few large companies, it makes it harder for creators and startups to grow their presence without worrying about all the big players changing the rules on them. Another problem is that centralization has created tensions in society, which we see in debates over subjects like fake news and EU privacy laws. These debates will only keep on intensifying from now. With Web 2, users are not able to carry a consistent experience across sites. For example, if you decide to create an account on a website using a regular username and password, then you will start from scratch with the site not knowing anything about your identity. And so it won't be able to provide you an experience similar to other sites you've interacted with in the past. It feels non-optimal having to teach and tell the same information again and again to every website you interact with. Every service you interact with may have different set of information about you. In other words, data is fragmented, and equally as bad, you have no idea what each company knows about you. In the case of a security breach, you will not know what information were disclosed about you because the data is opaque. There's a new iteration of the web that's gaining popularity that we believe will soon be the new way to build applications. This new web uses the power of blockchain to provide a new way to process and save data building on the idea of peer-to-peer technology. The peer-to-peer technology is not something new, but the reason it did not take off before is because the system was not scalable. Blockchain allows the peer-to-peer technology to scale and takes it to a whole new level. With blockchain, all computers in a network have access to the same level of information. Privacy is guaranteed with the use of cryptography. So now we have transparency while maintaining the privacy of all users. We're moving away from a world of data centralization to a world of data democracy. Enter Web3. With Web3, we get read, write, and trust. Verifiability is built in the core layer. Web3 comes with trust because everything is verifiable on the blockchain. If a service tells you they are not looking at your data, for example, in a verifiable way, then with Web3, we can confirm this claim. Whenever a service wants to make an agreement with a user, Web3 provides a way to make this guarantee in a transparent way. Trust is a big deal and makes a much safer and ethical protocol. And now that I spoke a little bit about Web3 and its benefit for us, I will give the stage to Diana, who will talk about the use cases.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Hassan, for giving us that background. And so, you know, one thing that Hassan talked about with Web 2 and the problems that we have in Web 2 today is that we are highly dependent on the centralized entities that govern our web today. So with social media, we've got, you know, the big companies like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram that are basically capturing all of our attention and has made us almost like slaves to the system. When we are just on social media, endlessly scrolling through, we're not actually deriving any benefit from doing that, but we're actually benefiting the centralized entities like the social media companies by giving them free data about ourselves and our behaviors. And then on another side that, you know, I'm really passionate about is the financial side. And we have become slaves to this financial system that we live in. And I think this applies, you know, not just if you're in the States or in North America, but all over the world. We have become slaves to this financial system as we basically lie at the discretion of banks and centralized entities to tell us if we can get a bank account, what types of currency we're allowed to deposit in it, if we can get a loan or not, what our interest rates will be, all of these things. And so what Web3 does is that it democratizes access to the web and to financial resources by removing the middleman and instituting this trustless system, which means that, you know, we don't have to rely on any human third party, any centralized entity that is run by humans to create that trust, that we're relying on technology instead. And what all of this is going to do for us ultimately is it's going to give us back control over our identity, because what happens when you, what I mean by democratizing access to these resources is that it is putting us all on an even playing field and giving us all equal opportunity and access to resources, regardless of, you know, how we look, our background, if we came from a wealthy family, the community that we grew up in, if, you know, we went to an Ivy League school, all of these things will not matter anymore. It'll put us all on the even playing field. And so that is what I'm going to be talking a little bit more about. And Hassan, if you want to go to the next slide, I'll start by talking a little bit more about how Web3 is going to democratize access to the web. And so there are several key components to Web3 when it comes to the web. And the first one is open source. So there's this ethos of everything is going to be open source. You're seeing this already in Web2 with GitHub, for instance. If you're a developer out there, you know all about that and how it's open source code. We're also talking about open source knowledge, and you're seeing this a lot with programs like the Gitcoin kernel program, which they post their entire curriculum online and anybody can go view it. You can just Google Gitcoin kernel and view their entire education resource. And we're seeing more and more of this. And the idea behind this is when everything is open source and transparent, that helps to build trust. And not only that, but when we can all band together and contribute our knowledge and contribute our skills to build something together in an open source world, only then can we really, create the best thing that we can possibly create for our society, because it's like the age old saying, two heads are better than one. So if you imagine, all 3 billion internet users or everybody in the world coming together to put their heads together and contribute their knowledge and skills, how much can we accomplish with that? The second factor is that Web3 is all about value addition and not value extraction. And so Hassan talked about this with a problem with Web2 is that, it's really all about extraction and not addition. And so if you go back to the example of social media sites are all about using you as the product to extract value out of you so that they can sell your information, your behavioral data, all of this to ad companies so that they can make more money. And I included this tweet from Jared Dicker, who's a key voice in the crypto space. And he said, Web 2 is all about monetizing the community, and Web 3 is about a community of monetizers. And it really goes back to this ethos of, we are trying to add value into the web, into society, in this Web 3 that we're all building, instead of trying to extract value through, taking users' data, using users as the product, things like that. The next key factor about Web3 is that your contribution precedes your reputation. And so what we're seeing in this Web 2 in this traditional world we live in is, as you grow up, your parents tell you like you have to get good grades so you can go to good school, so you can get more good grades so that you can get a good job, build this solid resume, get hired, make money, and then maybe contribute something to your company. In Web3, that script is kind of flipped. In Web3, you have the ability to contribute your skills and contribute what you know. And through your contribution, you build your reputation, and that gets you a job, that gets you the opportunity to make an income. And so with that model, it doesn't matter what community you come from, what background you come from. If your parents had enough money to send you to all the prep courses so that you could get good grades, get into a good school, none of that matters anymore. It really just depends on what skills you have, what you're able to contribute to the community. And once the community sees your contributions, they will reward you for it. The next factor that's key to Web3 is this concept of pseudonymity. And so in the world that we live in now, you can always go by a pseudonym. Say, you're on an online forum, and instead of going by your real name, you want to go by a pseudonym. That's totally fine. You can do that. You can go on forums, you can chat, you can engage. But the only thing you can't do is you can't engage in economic activity pseudonymously. So you have to, if you want to engage in any economic activity, like taking out a loan, getting a job, buying a house, you have to use your real name. And what this leads to is that, you have to go through a human person to get these things. And the problem with humans is that as humans, we all have biases. No matter how much we try to treat everybody equally, we all have biases depending on where we come from. And these are deeply ingrained in us and very difficult to get rid of. And so by replacing humans with smart contracts, which is the base of blockchain technology, we are able to eliminate human biases from the equation. And so when you go apply for a job, for instance, and you go to an interview, instead of meeting face-to-face with your manager, you could be put through a system that is going to grade you based on your skills and your level of contribution. Or when you go and try to take out a loan to start a small business or to buy a house, maybe instead of going to the bank and having to meet with the person that works at the bank and convincing them that you deserve to get this loan, you can apply through a smart contract that will grade you based on, how reliable you are based on what you have at that moment, not based on how you look, not based on your past history, none of that. And so this concept of pseudonymity, which is key to Web3, I think will be really powerful for helping us to reclaim our digital identities in a way, in the sense that we don't have to worry about the background we came from, the community we came from, how we look. We can really just worry about who we are today, what we're able to contribute, where we've come this far in our lives, and be judged based on solely that, like what value we're able to provide to our society. Hassan, if you want to go to the next slide. So the other pillar of democratizing access to resources is democratizing access to finance. And I know a lot of times when people hear about finance, they think, oh, I'm not into finance. This doesn't apply to me. I'm not interested. But in fact, we all use finance in our everyday lives. If you pay rent, if you buy groceries, if you have a bank account, if you have ever gotten a loan to buy a house, to start a small business, whatever the case may be, you have used finance. And so democratizing access to finance is especially important because money is power. You can talk all you want about equality and going out and protesting and movements and all of this, but at the end of the day, what is going to give people power and give people the ability to, transact in the society and like live happily in the society is ultimately money. And so, Hassan, if you go to the next slide. So what we're building with Web3 is a new kind of finance, and this is decentralized finance, or DeFi for short. And what this means is that instead of relying on centralized entities like banks to have all of our financial dealings, DeFi removes the middleman and allows us to transact money peer-to-peer. And so if you wanted to buy a house, for instance, instead of going through the banks to, go through this long process, you have to go through the banks to do that, you can simply transact directly with whatever person you want to buy the house from. And so it removes this middleman. And again, going back to what I said earlier, the benefit of replacing humans with technology, smart contracts, is that you can eliminate human biases. And that is really prevalent in our world today. And what this ultimately will do then is it'll level the playing field for all communities to have equal access to financial resources. And, with everything that we went through in the last year, with the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, especially like something that I'm very passionate about, I think, when we talk about all of these movements, I really think what lies at the core of it is access to financial resources. If we can put financial resources back into the hands of disadvantaged communities, then that is going to be the key way that we can help build up historically disadvantaged and discriminated against communities and help them to build financial resources, help them to build generational wealth so that they can be put on an equal playing field as everybody else. Hassan, next slide, please. And so I just wanted to give a couple of examples of how DeFi is playing a role in, all around the world. And I just listed a few countries here that are, really using crypto and using DeFi to help their citizens to be able to live a decent life. And so I'll give a couple of examples here. The first one is Nigeria. So I've got some facts here on the next slide about Nigeria. So Nigeria is, Hassan, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. So Nigeria is one of the leading countries in crypto trading all around the world. In fact, a study from last year, an online survey, showed that over 30% of Nigerians use crypto. And despite the Nigerian government, really cracking down on crypto, especially earlier this year, I think we saw this in February of this year, the stats show that people are actually using crypto more and more. And so we see that in May of this year, Nigeria received $2.4 billion in crypto compared to just 5 months ago in December 2020, when they only received $684 million in crypto. And so I think what this is showing is just a deep distrust in the national fiat, which has experienced a ton of inflation. In fact, the Central Bank of Nigeria devalued its national currency by 24% in 2020, and we're seeing it dip even further this year. And at the same time, inflation is currently at 18% in Nigeria. And one of the biggest things that's being inflated there is food, something that is a basic need that everybody needs there. And food inflation has hit its all-time high since 2008, since, over a decade ago. So people are really struggling because when you have things getting more and more expensive, but, people aren't making that much more money, then what that does is essentially it just makes people poorer and poorer. And so what we're seeing now in Nigeria is we're seeing imports being paid in crypto. So they do a lot of trading with China, for instance, and all of these imports are being paid in crypto because they're realizing that the value of their national currency isn't worth much, or, and there's no hope, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. And even local schools, like local private schools, are accepting tuition payment in crypto. And when we look at Africa as a whole more broadly, we see that Africa has seen a 387% increase in peer-to-peer trade volumes on Binance this year, and that the crypto user count on Binance, which is one of the biggest crypto exchanges and wallets, grew over 2,000%. So I think what we're seeing here, with Africa, with Nigeria specifically, but Africa more broadly, is that people are losing trust in their national currency. People have no hope for their national currency being worth very much in the future. And so they're turning to crypto, which they know is a more reliable source. Crypto does not change in value based on government politics, based on anything like that. And so it's become a much more reliable source of money holding and savings for people in certain countries than fiat has. And so that's one use case I wanted to call out. And this is happening in countries all around the world, not just in Africa. We've seen this with Venezuela and now with Argentina. Just the government devaluing its national currency, inflation going up sky high. I just spoke with somebody who's living in Lebanon at the moment, and it sounds like the same thing is happening in Lebanon. So this is not a unique problem to Nigeria, to Africa. This is a problem that people all over the world are experiencing. And so if you go to the next slide, Hassan, the next use case I want to talk about is the United States. So you might think, okay, well, for any of you listening from the US, you might think, well, our currency is like relatively stable compared to some of the other countries in the world. But we deal with our own whole host of issues in the US as well. And so while the US may have a more stable government and economy compared to some countries like Nigeria or Venezuela or Lebanon, our national debt has gone from $1 trillion in 1980 to over $23 trillion in 2020. This is, just when you paint it in that light, it's really incredible to think about. And another thing that's interesting to think about is that since the 1970s, productivity in the US has gone up 150%, but compensation has only gone up 30%. So what we're seeing is people are working more and more, people are working harder, but not at the same rate as how much their salary is getting increased. And again, same thing there. What that ultimately means is that people are getting poorer and poorer. Things are getting more expensive, but you're not making more money in proportion to how quickly things are getting more expensive. Beyond that, we also have this issue in the US of this deeply embedded history of racism in our country, which, again, going back to my earlier point about the flaw with humans managing everything is that we have to deal with human bias. And the only way to is to put financial resources back in the hands of historically disadvantaged communities, I think, is to remove this human bias, which the only way to remove this human bias is to actually remove it and replace it with technology, which does not have that bias. And so this is why I think DeFi is going to be super powerful, because it can level the playing field for all demographics and communities to get equal access to financial resources. So, historically, or even today, statistically, it shows that Black people get higher interest rates from banks for, with the exact same credentials. We see, VCs handing out money to far more white founders than Black founders. And these are all, clear statistics that these are facts that we cannot deny. And again, the only way to get rid of these human biases is to remove these human intermediaries with smart contracts and eliminate that middleman. So Hassan, if you could go to the next slide, please. So to sort of sum all of this up, when we're talking about taking back control of your digital identity, which, as we move forward into a much more web focused world, our digital identity is essentially our physical identity as we spend more and more time online. And so when we're thinking about taking back control of our digital identity, which includes who we are on social, whether we're interacting with family, friends, or with total strangers, what we use to log into apps, our online resume, all of these things, Web3 can really help us to regain control of our digital identity by putting power back in the hands of individuals instead of centralized entities like corporations, by democratizing access to resources, whether financial or otherwise, by allowing us to be who we want, regardless of how we look, regardless of how we grew up, the community that we came from, any of that. And why I think Unstoppable Domains is a really key part of this movement is because at Unstoppable Domains, we have blockchain domains, which is basically like the .coms of Web3. Your blockchain domain is the root of your Web3 identity. And so with your blockchain domain, not only can you create a website like you can with .coms, you can also use it to log in to any apps that you might want to use. You can use it to send and receive money. And so right now, if any of you have tried sending crypto, it's pretty complex. You have to use this. You have to know the person's public key that you're sending the crypto to, which is this long string of like 40 characters of numbers and letters. And there's no way anybody can remember this. And so a blockchain domain can replace that long string of letters and numbers with a basic name like Diana.crypto, for instance. And so, this is why we're super passionate about what we're building, is we think that blockchain domains will be the foundation of how we're all able to take back control of our digital identity. And I think that's it, Hassan. So yeah, I'll toss it back to you, Roz, and see if you have any questions from the audience.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was amazing. It's awesome to learn about all the amazing things that you all are doing. One thing that came up for me is the fact that you mentioned that peer-to-peer functionality has been around for a while, but it wasn't really scalable before blockchain technology came around. What is it about blockchain technology that made peer-to-peer functionality more scalable?
Yeah, I could take that. So for those who are not very familiar with the term peer-to-peer network, this is basically when you have a group of devices that are connected together to form a network, which then allows them to share and store data, share and store files, for example. For a peer-to-peer network to work long-term, it needs to have a high group of devices connected at all times. And in the past, this was hard to do 24/7, but blockchain introduces some kind of gaming model to incentivize people who help keep the network running. And this incentivization is what allows the blockchain to scale. Past peer-to-peer networks relied on altruistic behavior to keep the network running, which turns out to be not so scalable.
That definitely makes sense, especially because of what you all have explained behind the motivation for why certain companies are behaving with their data in the way that they are, which also begs the question, Tim Berners-Lee invented the internet with a very specific purpose in mind. What do you think he thinks about where the internet is today?
Yeah, Tim made a few appearances on TED Talks, and in one of them he talks about the current web and what sort of web we would like to see. Tim says we pride ourselves with the web being a medium for free speech. Sure, we can tweet and lots of people can see our tweets, except when they can't, except when Twitter is blocked in a country. That's not the open web Tim had in mind. Another thing is that Tim also wants to see a web where all the data is linked together. The more things connected, the more powerful it is. And right now, each company stores their own data in their own servers, and that data most of the time is opaque. To the outside world, data is fragmented. But with the blockchain technology, the name itself says that everything is chained, right? Blockchain. And so data is linked. And Tim would like the web to be open. And with Web3, everybody has access to the data in the blockchain. And so it is open by default.
Okay, awesome. That's really great to know. And when you say that Web3 is the read, write, trust web, can you talk more about what you mean by the trust component?
Sure. Because everything is verifiable on the blockchain, if a company wants to make an agreement with a user, for example, we will not sell your data, then Web3 provides the platform for it to do it in a verifiable way. The user can trust, right? That's the trust component, that this agreement will be guaranteed because they are able to verify it on the blockchain in a verifiable way, in a transparent way.
Got it. I have a couple other questions, but it looks like we have one from the chat. Can we make web apps with the blockchain technology at the core through unstoppable domains? And can you tell us more about that?
Can we make web apps with the blockchain technology at the core through unstoppable domains? Yeah, for sure. You could definitely make decentralized applications that users could, for example, there are like applications right now where if you want to send money to someone else, digital currency, you'd have to put in a long hex, like characters of hexadecimal characters, and it's a very long string. And if you make a mistake somewhere, then the currency will either go to someone else or will just go to nobody, and you will lose that money. And with unstoppable domains, you could use a domain name instead of that long string of characters to improve the user experience. So that's one area where you could use like blockchain technology. And long term, we think that we will become blockchain domains will become core to digital identity, and so you will be able to go to a site and log in with brad.crypto, for example, and you don't have to create an account with that website. You don't have to register username, password. You just log in using your blockchain domain, and the site will already have information about you from the available data that you made permissible for them to see on the blockchain. And that way they would be able to provide you a similar experience across sites. So overall better user experience there.
So you just mentioned digital identities. What are the key components to forming a digital identity?
I can take this. So I think I mentioned earlier too, like your digital identity is going to be your physical identity in the future. We're moving towards a more and more web dominated world where, so many people are on the internet all the time now, and it's only getting more and more so, especially as a younger generation rises up and almost all of them are on the internet. So when I think about your digital identity, I really think about like who you are when you interact on the web. And so you can think about, there's your social identity when you interact on social media channels. And this can also vary from channel to channel. So for instance, for me, like I use my Instagram for mostly like travel photos and things like that. I use my Twitter for more crypto content. And then, my LinkedIn is sort of my professional identity. And so you can have a different sort of like pseudonym or a different identity across all of these channels. There's also your work identity. And so, a lot of people, especially after the pandemic, are working online. And so you have that part of your online identity. You also have your digital identity that you use to access your financial resources. If you, pay your credit card bills online, if you pay your gas bills, your water bills online, or if you access your health records online, you can log in and, view your health records from your doctor appointment. All of these things, there's that part of your identity, which is more like your legal information, your personal information. So I think all aspects of your identity, your physical identity, will become your digital identity if they haven't already.
Very, very interesting. So then, in addition to blockchain domains, are there any other tools or ways that we can take back control of our digital identities?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think, blockchain domains are sort of at the core of how we're going to interact on Web3, but there are tons of cool projects being built out on Web3 right now that are, trying to eliminate some of the problems that we faced in Web2 with everything becoming far too centralized, with too much value being extracted instead of added into our society. And so I would say any DeFi app that you see out there that's trying to help people, take back control of their finances and manage their wealth, I would say that is something that, is helping us take back control of our digital identity. Any Web3 apps, really, I just think that blockchain domains are sort of at the foundation of it. Like that's what you can use to log into all of your apps. That's what you can use to, to post on forums, to transact online. And so, yeah, there's tons.
Okay. Well, some people may argue that if we can't see blockchain and truly understand how it works, that, yeah, like how can we believe that it's actually true and what you all are saying is in fact what's happening?
Yeah. And so, I think most people that are on the internet right now, which everybody's on the internet right now on Zoom, but most people who use the internet don't actually know how the internet works. Like if I asked you to explain to me, like, tell me, how does the internet actually work? Like, how does it work that I can type in google.com and then it pulls up the website google.com that I see? Like, how does it work? I would be willing to bet you that the majority of people here could not explain that. And so I think it's the same thing with blockchain. I think it's, you don't have to understand the ins and outs of exactly how blockchain technology works. We can sort of leave that to the devs like Hassan to make sure that that's being built out right. But for the rest of us, non-technical people, all we have to do is make sure that, it's working well for us on the front end. And I think that's the extent of, what we need to worry about. And then the back end is something that is, we just trust that it's there.
Okay. And since you mentioned that Hassan and the devs are building out all of these tools, we do know that there have been a lot of biases that have been just naturally ingrained into AI and technology on a whole because of biased engineers or a lack of diversity within those teams. What are you all doing at Unstoppable Domains to ensure that smart contractors, for instance, are not biased as well?
Yeah, I think this is a really good question. And I think, as we think about building out Web3, which we're in the very early days of doing that right now, I think it's really important that we make sure that we're bringing in a diverse representation of society at large to help build this. Because for me, I think one of our biggest mistakes with building out the original web was that when you picture, the devs and the coders and people in tech, you just picture white males. And for me, there's nothing scarier than having a group of white men build out the future of the web, which is our future, like the future of how we're going to live. So for me, it's super important that we, focus on diversity consciously in our hiring and make sure that we are really consciously thinking about, like, how do we bring in the best representation of society at large so that we can really get a good perspective from what society actually wants in the future of the web and the future of how we live.
Yeah, that's super important. Thank you for sharing that. Can you explain to us the relationship between the concept of a self-sovereign individual and a digital identity?
I think it's really one and the same. Like I said, like everything is shifting to being online and it's becoming more and more so in the future. And so how we view our self-sovereign identity, aka I think our physical identity, is going to be more or less the same as how we view our digital identity in the future.
And then let's talk about safety for trans people. There must be a lot of reasons for wanting to clean their digital identity. Unfortunately, safety is one of them. How would this be beneficial to the trans community?
Yeah, one thing that's special about blockchain technology and Web3 is that there is really like not much by way of censorship. And so right now, you can picture Twitter or like some social media site shutting you down for saying something that they don't like. In the future on blockchain technology, everything is open. Everything is because it's not managed by centralized entities. people have sort of like the freedom to do whatever they want. And obviously there's a dark side to that as well. With more and more freedom, there can also be dangers. People can say very harmful things that also, is not good. And so I think what we're going to see with Web3 is that when everything gets decentralized, we're not going to have, like right now, we sort of have a few main social media sites that everybody is on. We have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, that's like what everybody is on these days. I think in the future, when everything is decentralized, instead of seeing a handful of social media sites that everyone's on, I think we'll see a ton more. And I think what's going to happen is that people will naturally gravitate towards communities with similar interests, with similar values, with similar visions for the future. And so I can see, communities of trans people, for instance, being built out super strong, and they sort of have each other to be part of this community with, and have the platform to speak openly about their experiences without being judged, without being shut down, without getting in trouble, like legally by the government or anything like that. So I think there will be a lot more freedom for, trans people or any other marginalized group to be able to share their experiences openly and not be judged or not be punished for it.
That's really, really great to hear. I guess that means go future. Go unstoppable domains. So we have a couple questions in the chat, but my last question for you all before we go over to that would be, what makes Unstoppable Domain tech for social impact?
Yeah, I think, because we are building the foundation of how people interact on Web3, which, Web3, I think is going to solve a lot of the social problems that we face in society today by replacing human biases with technology. I think, we're just trying to build the foundation of what is going to enable everybody to be able to interact on Web3. And I think that's, ultimately what we're doing. And then, of course, on the internally, for our team, like we definitely are very conscious of hiring diverse candidates. And so, especially in the crypto space right now, it's still pretty male dominated, and white males especially. And so we're, definitely making a conscious effort in our hiring to bring more diversity into the company so that we can really, like hear all voices, hear all perspectives, and build out a product that people actually want to use and that actually will benefit society.
And we can already see some of the impacts, like you mentioned, with people being able to have a more stable currency to use in countries where their currency hasn't been as stable. Okay, so I'm just going to transition over to some of the questions that we've been getting in the chat. So Olga would like to know, does Web3 imply that territory restrictions for watching content will be removed? Now I can visit some websites due to my current location.
I think that's really up to government regulation. And so I think one of the biggest challenges that we face right now with adoption of blockchain technology and really building out Web3 is government regulation. Right now, the government hasn't spoken very clearly or loudly about how they feel about blockchain and crypto. And so that's something we'll have to wait and see. I sort of see it as once, one country really moves ahead with it, a lot of other countries will follow, especially if a big country like the US moves forward with it. I think in either direction, I think if the US moves forward with favorable policy, with allowing people to use blockchain and crypto, I think I could see other countries following suit. I think if the US moves forward with not positive, shutting down crypto and blockchain, I could see other countries sort of, taking advantage of that and jumping on and making their country favorable to these things so that people will, flock to their countries, that they can build more wealth in their country. So I think government regulation is a big part of that. And to your question, Olga, I think whether Web3 is going to release all territory restrictions, I think that is going to be up to government regulation. But Hassan, is there anything from like the more technical side that you would say?
I could say that, yeah, so I agree with you, Diana, regarding like, it depends on the government on how they decide with this. But if ever, let's say someone starts publishing, you know, websites on Web3 that you know, like child pornography or something like that, then we would depend on browsers to have like some kind of filter list to prevent people from accessing these websites. And so eventually we're making it decentralized, but we're relying on the community to help us make the best user experience there.
A comment from Pamela is that trust is tough when it comes to tech. I think the internet kind of happened to us and we were told it was going to be the best for everyone. Now we know that many of these platforms are built to monetize our data, and unraveling it seems impossible. What would you all say to that?
I would say that, you know, when Tim Berners-Lee invented the World Wide Web, he wanted to, that wasn't the idea he had in mind. But as technology improved and Web 2.0 came, then people start using these tech firms, you know, companies that as mediators, as like, for example, when you log in, you use Facebook or Google to log in. And because we're doing that now, they have a lot of information about us, and they are now selling our data to other companies and things like that. And so with Web3, we go back to the main, like with the idea of Web1, where user controls their data, and that's and it's going to be much harder to sell your data without your permission in Web3. And so I think that will solve this problem.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think this is why it's so important that Hassan did start the presentation with sort of a history on the web, because it's important for everyone to know that when the original web was created, that it was created with a lot of the same intentions that we have now for building Web3. Yet look where we ended up. So I think it's very important for anyone who is thinking about building the future of the web to really, you know, study the history of the web and learn from it so that we don't make the same mistakes again and that we can do better.
I know we have a couple minutes left, so I would love to end the session by learning a bit more about each of you and possibly your career journeys so that we can help to inspire a few other people.
Do you want to go first, Hassan?
Sure. Let's see. Well, I joined Unstoppable at the end of last year, and I love that I work for a company that is part of a community that's working in bringing democracy to the web, and that it's by having the web be run by the community rather than the big tech firms. I am a big proponent for the open web, and before Unstoppable, I was at Mozilla working on a browser called Firefox that tries to prevent storing your data and selling it to other companies, like some other browsers do. And so, you know, that was the main reason I joined Mozilla. It was all about the mission, and I'm happy to be part of this community that is trying to bring the next iteration of the web.
Yeah, and then for myself, I've actually had like quite a winding journey to get here. I started my career as an attorney in Chicago, and so I did that for a little bit. Decided it wasn't for me. I made the impulsive decision to quit my job to travel the world, and so I just, you know, put in my notice, quit my job, and started traveling. Didn't have any backup career plans or anything like that, and I became a travel blogger and content creator. And so when I first heard about crypto and Web3 and all of this stuff, I learned about the decentralized element of it first and what that would mean for creators. And so right now, you know, if any of you are creators online of any sort, if you're an artist, a musician, a blogger, an Instagram influencer, if you create content online of any sort, you know that it's very difficult to monetize that content. And you basically rely on the Instagram and all of those centralized entities to tell you if you have enough followers, if you have high enough engagement, so that brands will want to work with you. And so when I was first learning about decentralization and what this would mean for the web and how it would put power more into the hands of creators and users. So instead of then relying on Instagram to tell me how many followers I had and how much I was worth, I could get paid directly from my followers. And so it's sort of like the Patreon model that you see now that some creators and podcasters are using. It would be that sort of model. Instead of liking someone's photo on Instagram, you could tip them in tokens or tip them $1 or something like that. So that really struck me. And that's sort of what initially brought me down this rabbit hole of learning more about crypto and learning more about Web3. And then I joined the company at the beginning of this year to work on the podcast. And I've been working on, just creating more and more educational content on crypto for the masses, because I really think that everybody can benefit from this like new iteration of the web that we're building. And I just want to create content to educate people on that.
That is amazing. Thank you both for sharing so much. I know we only have a minute left, but if there's anything else that you all want to call out or any final words of wisdom, now is a chance.
Well, I could say just a plug there. We're hiring, so go to unstopabledomains.com/jobs, and we hire all around the world. We are very remote friendly, and we have great benefits.
Yep, I agree with that.
Amazing. Thank you both so much. This was a wonderful chat. It's amazing to learn more about all of the amazing things that you all are doing.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to our amazing panel, Diana, Hassan, and Roz, for that great chat. That was so awesome.